Villager hunting, one of the most frustrating, tedious, but rewarding experiences in New Horizons. Well, if you're lucky, frustrating 1026 times and rewarding 1 time. There are 391 different villagers in New Horizons, each with their own look, style, and one of 8 personalities available in the game. If you spend time researching the available villagers in the game, you'll eventually find one that you can't live without. This character becomes your dream villager, or your dreamy. No, not him. Yes, much better. But how can you acquire your dreamy? Well, there's a few ways to do so. One way is through a random villager showing up at your campsite. If you talk to the villager, eventually they will ask to play a card game with you. The reward for winning is an item or the villager moving into your island. There's a specific chance for each available conversation option and the chances for the campsite villager to ask to move in, which I didn't know was a thing until now. The first percent in both of these columns are the chances that talking to the campsite villager will result in the different conversation options. The number in the parentheses are the probabilities of the same conversation options after the player has already won something from the villager. Winning a game eliminates the chance of playing another game, so the probability of the player receiving the move-in opportunity option increases, especially after failing a move-in attempt with the same campsite villager. If you are successful with receiving the move-in opportunity, there are even more options available that you must get lucky to overcome. Is there a way to tell who may show up at your campsite, though? Yes and no. There's a 50% chance that the villager will be completely random. And there's a 50% chance that it will be a villager from one of the personality categories that you don't already have on your island. I'm assuming this has something to do with helping the player collect all the reactions since these are personality specific. Or maybe the developers think it would be nice for the player to have varying personalities throughout their island. If you have all 8 personalities present on your island already, then the campsite role will be all personalities and is a 1 in 391 chance of a specific villager showing up. There are a few exceptions. Villagers that have occupied a house on your island before are excluded from showing up at the campsite, as are villagers that have already visited your campsite. The only way for these villagers to visit your campsite again is if you've rolled every other villager in the game to your campsite. If this happens, then the campsite resets and it can roll all the villagers again. The same thing happens with the missing personality roll, if the player has encountered every villager of that specific personality. It would take forever to get a specific villager even with time traveling, but at least you won't get the same villager twice, especially if you have one of each personality on your island already. The final exception is a villager will not show up in your campsite if it is in your move-in queue. From my understanding and what I found from reliable sources, the move-in queue is a set of 4 villagers which are picked up from visiting people's islands. These villagers will be the next ones to move in if you do not fill an empty plot on your island and let the game do it for you the next day. Upon successfully inviting a campsite villager to your island, if you have all 10 villagers on your island, the campsite visitor will randomly pick one of your current neighbors to move out. There is a way to force a specific villager out, but it does require some cheesing. During the conversation, your campsite visitor will tell you specifically which villager they will replace. If they name a neighbor you want to stay, you must stop at this screen and close out of Animal Crossing. If you select an option from the prompt window, the game will autosave and you'll be SOL. From that point on, they will only ask for that one specific villager to move out, and you will not have the cheesy choice of picking whoever you want. If you were successful and did close the game at the right time, kudos, there is a chance that the visitor will pick a different villager the next time. This kind of sucks though, causes a lot of dialogue because you have to get the campsite visitor to give you the move-in opportunity that we talked about earlier. Getting the visitor to pick your most hated neighbor could take some time. Not the most efficient way, but if your dreamy ends up at your campsite randomly, it's definitely worth the time to cheese it up. Another way you can get campsite visitors is by using amiibo cards. If you go to the terminal in resident services, there's an option to invite a villager using an amiibo. As of the posting of this video, only Animal Crossing villager cards work here. In New Leaf, there were specific amiibos from other Nintendo games that worked, and you could invite some crossover villagers to your town. I had Wolflink. He pretty dope. Fingers crossed that this comes to New Horizons eventually. When you properly scan an amiibo card, the villager will immediately visit the campsite. When talking to the villager, they will request a specific DIY recipe. If the player does not have the recipe, the villager will provide them with the instructions, allowing the player to learn the recipe. Upon completing the request, the player will get a reward, but the villager will not move in automatically. Instead, they will tell the player to invite them again. Once the player completes 3 DIY requests for the amiibo villager on 3 different days, the player will then have the option to pick any villager from their island to move out. Like always, there are a few exceptions to using amiibos. 1. You cannot call campers who are already in your moving queue. If you do, you will get an away message from the villager and the amiibo transaction will end. 2. You cannot use special character amiibo cards like Isabelle or Versetti. They say they're busy and they can't make it to the campsite. 3rd, new villagers to New Horizons do not have amiibo cards, therefore cannot be invited to the campsite, yet. I'm pretty sure their cards are coming eventually. But sorry to all the Raymond Dreamy players, you'll have to find them a different way. Another way to get a new neighbor is to steal your friend's villager after they ask said villager to leave their island. Once the villager is in boxes, which is when the furniture is all packed up and in boxes in their house, the villager is available for anyone to show up and whisk them away to another land. You must have an open plot available on your island for the villager to agree to move in, so make sure you place an empty plot if you have 9 or less villagers, or allow a villager to move off your island, making their house magically disappear. Inviting the villager will place a sold sign on your empty plot, and the new neighbor will move in the next day. That's it. Nothing to it except needing friends. This is the easiest way. If one of your friends has your Dreamy in boxes, raid their island and snatch them up. The final and probably most tedious way to villager hunt is island hopping. But that's gonna be in a part 2 because there's so much freaking information that it deserves its own video. Have any questions about campsite villagers? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you next time. Bye! I didn't hit stop yet.